The courtroom buzzed like a hive. A dozen cell phones glowed in laps, the murmur of impatience swelling under the fluorescent lights. Then the sharp click of heels broke through. It measured, deliberate, defiant. She stepped up to the stand, chin lifted, designer jacket draped like armor. Every movement said she'd been here before, but never as the accused. Judge Caprio looked down at the file, his tone calm, procedural. "You're charged with reckless driving in a school zone. How do you plead?" Her lips curved, not an apology, but amusement. "Do you even know who my dad is?" she asked, her voice cutting through the courtroom like glass. A few gasps slipped from the benches behind her. Someone stifled a laugh. Another whispered she didn't just say that. She leaned closer as if daring him. "He runs this city." For a moment, silence swallowed everything. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to vanish. Judge Caprio didn't move, didn't blink. He simply lifted his eyes to hers. The girl smirked, mistaking his quiet for surrender. To her, authority was a thing to be bought, not earned. She was used to people folding at the mention of a powerful name, but this wasn't one of them. This was a courtroom that answered to truth, not titles. And what the girl didn't realize was that she had just challenged the one man in that room who could not be intimidated. Outside that small courtroom, the city moved like it always did, horns blaring, suits rushing, people trying to matter. Inside, though, everything had slowed to a crawl. What looked like a routine hearing had turned into a mirror held up to the entire system. This wasn't just about a traffic ticket. It was about what happens when privilege collides with accountability. The girl stood there as if the room owed her respect before she'd earned it. She didn't see a judge. She saw another obstacle to bend. To her, laws were flexible things, written for other people. When she said her father runs the city, she wasn't exaggerating. His name opened doors, erased records, and whispered protection into places where justice was supposed to speak for itself. But that day, the air felt different. Judge Frank Caprio's presence was quiet, yet unshakable, the kind that made even arrogance hesitate. For decades, he'd turned ordinary cases into lessons in grace and fairness. He'd listened to veterans, single mothers, struggling students, and treated each one as though their story mattered, calm, fair, unmoved by power. He was the kind of man who believed that justice, to mean anything, had to treat a billionaire's daughter the same as a janitor's son. And yet, as she smirked at him, the audience could sense something shifting. This wasn't going to end in the usual way with excuses, privilege, or backroom favors. Because in the next few minutes, one quiet sentence from Judge Caprio would flip the entire power dynamic and change her life forever, from the moment she could walk. The world had taught her a simple rule. Her father's name was power, and power meant doors opened before she even knocked. She had grown up in penthouse suites and gilded hallways, where mistakes were invisible and consequences were optional. When she scraped a neighbor's car as a child, someone else paid for it. When she argued with teachers, her father's calls quietly shifted the tide. Everything she wanted, every path she walked, had been cleared for her before she even realized it needed clearing. Her confidence wasn't earned, it was inherited. It was nurtured like a delicate, untouchable flower. She had never had to wait, to plead, or to prove herself. To her, the world existed to accommodate her whims, and the rules belonged to everyone else. Law, civility, authority, these were interesting experiments. Useful only when convenient, icily ignored when inconvenient. She had learned early that a name could bend adults, and that glances of disapproval were meaningless if backed by influence. And now, in the courtroom, every instinct she had been raised with hummed beneath her skin. She rolled her eyes when the bailiff cleared the floor, her posture sharp, her grin a shield of entitlement. She leaned back in the witness stand as if the judge, the jury, and the spectators were extras in a show staged for her amusement. When others whispered or shifted nervously, she smiled wider, as though daring someone to challenge her. Casual disrespect dripped from her words. And yet, it was almost charming because she had been taught to carry it with ease. Her body language told a story of control, crossed arms, weight balanced perfectly on one leg, fingers drumming a quiet rhythm of impatience and superiority. She flicked her hair, smirked at the murmurs around her, and spoke with a cadence that suggested the courtroom existed solely to entertain her. To her, every glance, every cough, every sidelong stare was a confirmation that she had already won, because winning, in her world, was simply a matter of expectation. But arrogance has a blind spot. It mistakes patience for weakness, restraint for fear, and calm for submission. It underestimates the weight of experience, the authority built quietly over decades, and the kind of power that cannot be bought or borrowed. And the man she was trying to intimidate had built his entire career standing against exactly this kind of behavior, Judge Frank. Caprio did not command a room with volume or theatrics. He did it with presence, with the quiet gravity of a man who understood that authority was not earned through fear, but through fairness. To watch him in the courtroom was to watch patience made tangible. His gaze met each defendant with the same steady attention, his tone even, never condescending, never dismissive. Every word measured, every pause deliberate. He carried the weight of the law lightly, but the responsibility of human dignity heavily. He believed that a courtroom was more than a place for verdict. It was a classroom, a stage where lessons of accountability, empathy, and respect could unfold in real time. For him, justice was a teacher, not a hammer. Every interaction, every ruling, was a chance to show that integrity mattered more than intimidation, that the truth was not flexible. And that character could not be bought or inherited. Judge Caprio had faced thousands of defendants. Over decades, wealthy heirs who thought privilege exempted them, immigrants clutching the last fragments of hope, single parents grappling with impossible odds, children misled by circumstance. The power of their last name, the weight of their wealth, the sway of their connections, none of it altered the way he listened, the way he measured each story, the way he judged. In his courtroom, everyone's humanity was acknowledged. Every action was weighed on the same scale. This was not a man easily rattled. He had seen threats and tantrums before. He had faced arrogance that came wrapped in designer clothes, in familiar surnames, in polished smiles. He had endured dismissive glares and sharp words intended to intimidate. And yet, he never flinched. He did not need to respond with anger or theatrics, because his authority was built on something far deeper than fear. It was built on principle. To challenge him was to challenge decades of unwavering commitment to fairness, to accountability, and to truth. There was a rhythm to his judgments, a consistency that commanded respect without demanding it. He understood the delicate balance between mercy and justice, knowing when to guide and when to hold firm. His empathy was not weakness. It was an anchor, a force that reinforced his impartiality. He could see the human behind the misstep, the story behind the defiance, the lesson behind the rebellion. And in that calm, unwavering presence, arrogance found its match, confidence met its counter, and entitlement confronted its reckoning. The audience could feel it, the subtle shift in the air, the quiet tension that suggested this would not be a simple hearing. Integrity was facing entitlement, and the outcome was anything but guaranteed for the girl. This was not her usual world of easy wins and borrowed authority. Here, patience was a weapon, experience a shield, and moral clarity an unstoppable force. And then, the girl doubled down. The courtroom had settled into a fragile rhythm, quiet hum of anticipation hanging in the air, when she leaned forward, eyes flashing, and cut through it. Her voice, previously measured with smug amusement, sharpened, slicing across the rows of spectators. "Do you even know who my dad is?" she demanded again, each word loaded with defiance. She let a beat stretch before delivering the line she had practiced countless times, louder this time, as if volume alone could assert dominance. "He runs this city." Heads turned. Some sank slightly, avoiding eye contact, caught between discomfort and curiosity. Others lifted, glancing at Judge Caprio, seeking a sign, any signal that the courtroom's balance had shifted. Whispers swirled in the background, a ripple of tension moving like electricity across the benches. For the first time, it felt less like a hearing and more like a standoff. The young girl's smirk widened, her body leaning into the expectation that authority would bend under the weight of her name. But Judge Caprio remained still. His pen hovered over the papers in front of him, his eyes locking on hers with steady composure. He did not raise his voice. He did not shift in his chair. He simply absorbed the challenge, a calm counterpoint to her storm. Every second of his silence stretched, drawing the courtroom tight with anticipation. The energy was almost tangible. Every heartbeat seemed louder. Every intake of breath deliberate. The silence itself became a weapon, more unnerving than any shout, more commanding than any gesture. The girl's confidence flickered for a split moment, as if sensing that patience could be a force she had never encountered. The room leaned forward, collectively holding its breath, understanding that something pivotal was about to unfold, and then, with the same quiet authority that had defined him for decades, Judge Caprio prepared to respond. Not with anger, not with spectacle, but with a clarity and precision that made the air seem to thrum with inevitability. What he said next wasn't loud, but it landed like a hammer. Judge Caprio leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. The room had gone still, the murmurs fading into an almost sacred silence. He began, not with a shout or a reprimand, but with the weight of decades of experience carried in measured tones that demanded attention. This courtroom, he said, exists to uphold the law, not to serve the whims of wealth, influence, or fear. Every person who steps before me, regardless of their background, is subject to the same rules. There are no exceptions, and there is no one who can bend justice to their will. His words were calm, deliberate, each syllable reinforcing authority not through intimidation but through certainty. The girl's smirk faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. She had expected either silence or a flustered retort, a concession to her audacity. Instead, she encountered clarity, a quiet immovability that had nothing to do with her father's power. Caprio continued, his voice soft but unwavering. You may believe that your father's influence defines the boundaries of what is acceptable, but here it does not. Titles, connections, money, they do not dictate behavior. Responsibility does. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle, watching the subtle shifts in the girl's posture. Her shoulders, previously squared with confidence, sagged slightly. Her chin, once lifted high in arrogance, lowered in recognition. Even the spectators seemed to lean in, collectively absorbing the moral precision of what was unfolding. Caprio's silence between sentences became as commanding as his words, giving each phrase room to resonate. Giving her time to truly hear what he was saying, then he reframed the nature of power itself. A line that would echo far beyond these walls. Power doesn't excuse behavior. It reveals it. The courtroom exhaled collectively, the simplicity and truth of it cutting through the tension. He wasn't attacking her, nor was he diminishing her. He was holding up a mirror. The reflection staring back at her was unflinching, entitlement without accountability. It's not strength, it was exposure. The girl's confidence began to erode, her gestures losing the casual ease she had relied upon. Fingers twitched nervously on the stand. Eyes darted away from the judge's unwavering gaze, and when she spoke, her voice was softer, less certain. The audience felt it, the shift from control to confrontation, from privilege assumed to responsibility enforced. She was learning in the clearest way that no one's inheritance could shield them from consequence. Caprio moved seamlessly into the ruling, precise and fair. You will answer for the actions before you. The law does not bend, and neither shall we. This is not personal, and it is not punitive beyond the bounds of justice. It is fair, it is necessary. It is your responsibility alone. There was no vindictiveness, no attempt to humiliate, only the steady application of principle. The courtroom absorbed the verdict with a sense of inevitability, the tension collapsing into an almost sacred relief. Spectators reacted subtly at first, exhales, nods, the shifting of weight in seats, but the emotional weight was profound. They had witnessed more than a case. They had seen the embodiment of integrity confronting entitlement, reason meeting arrogance. The satisfaction was palpable. Relief mingled with awe. Moral victory had been achieved without spectacle. Yet with the clarity of truth, Caprio concluded, his gaze softening but his authority unshaken. Remember, influence may open doors elsewhere, but it does not enter here. Responsibility enters here. Respect enters here. And the law enters here. His words lingered, filling the room with the resonance of accountability, echoing in the minds of everyone present. The girl, now silent, absorbed the lesson not as insult, but as reality. Every expectation she had carried into that room, every assumption of immunity had been challenged. And in that challenge, she understood privilege could not shield her from the truth of her actions, nor from the impartial weight of justice. The courtroom remained calm. But outside these walls, a different kind of reckoning was already beginning. Cameras had captured every second. Social media had already picked up the clip, and the moment the quiet, decisive confrontation was poised to ripple far beyond the room. But the real impact didn't happen in the courtroom. It happened online within hours of the courtroom drama. The video clip had spread like wildfire. TikTok users stitched it with commentary, slowing the moment where she smirked and paused before her father's name dropped, playing it again and again to capture the tension. YouTube Shorts condensed the exchange into 30-second bursts of pure anticipation. Captions reading, "Privilege meets reality. Watch what happens next." Facebook feeds filled with the clip, shared over and over, accompanied by the kind of comments that made viewers feel part of something larger than themselves. This is how judges should act. One comment read, "A simple acknowledgement of integrity in a world increasingly accustomed to spectacle." Another chimed in, "Entitlement finally checked." Finally, some wrote, "Respect is louder than power. Watch and learn." The reactions came in from every corner of the internet, each like, share, and repost, amplifying the cultural weight of what had transpired. Hashtags trended overnight. Hashtag justice served. Hashtag Caprio.com. Hashtag power revealed. The courtroom moment had transcended its walls, becoming a lesson repeated in every language of social validation the internet offered. Reaction videos poured out in waves. Influencers paused the clip frame by frame, highlighting the shift in the girl's posture, the unflinching calm of the judge, the momentary silence that became louder than any shout. News outlets replayed the moment on their evening segments, framing it as more than a traffic hearing. It was a clash between inherited power and earned authority. Podcasts dissected the interaction, debating the psychology of privilege and the enduring impact of measured moral courage. Every platform added its own lens, yet the central narrative remained unbroken. Dignity and fairness can outlast arrogance. The girl, once a symbol of untouchable influence, became a case study in the consequences of assumed immunity. Her name circulated not in praise, but as a reminder that power without accountability is fragile. Meanwhile, Judge Caprio emerged as a symbol of reason and integrity, a figure whose calm authority reminded millions of what justice could be when untainted by fear or favoritism. Across forums, comment sections, and video threads, viewers expressed the satisfaction of witnessing a cultural leveling, of seeing someone held accountable without humiliation. The audience felt their own investment in the moment. Immigrant families shared it as a lesson in fairness. Young viewers posted it as inspiration. And those long familiar with the halls of privilege saw validation in the principle that not even a last name could bend justice. Every like, every share, every comment became a collective acknowledgement that this was more than a viral video. It was a cultural touchstone. And yet, while the internet buzzed, rippling outward with awe, debate, and applause, the lesson had only begun. The courtroom had closed, the ruling had been delivered, but Judge Caprio wasn't done teaching. Judge Caprio looked around the courtroom one last time, his gaze calm but purposeful, and spoke not as a man asserting victory, but as a teacher sharing a lesson. There was no gloating, no trace of triumph in his voice. He did not belittle the girl, nor did he need to. The moment itself, the quiet demonstration of principle, had already conveyed more than any words could. Instead, he framed the outcome as a reminder to everyone present, and to everyone who would watch the clip later, that fairness was not optional, and respect was never inherited. The law exists to ensure fairness, he began. His tone measured, resonant, each word deliberate. It does not bend for money, for connections, or for fame. It measures actions, not family, choices, not titles. Here, everyone is accountable for what they do, not for who they know. That is the essence of justice. He paused, letting the weight of that truth settle into the room, into the minds of spectators, into the hearts of those watching around the world, he continued, turning the story outward, beyond the walls of the courthouse. Respect is earned by behavior. True authority comes from self-control, from integrity, from doing what is right even when it is hard, even when it is inconvenient. Power is not shown in the loud voice or the family name. Power is shown in restraint, in fairness, and in dignity. His words were simple, yet profound a reflection of the timeless truths that define human character. Then, with clarity and finality, he reframed the moment as universal wisdom, the kind that transcends class, background, and circumstance. No matter who your parents are, your choices are still your own. The statement landed like a quiet declaration, a moral compass pointing the way forward. It was both gentle and uncompromising, a reminder that the measure of a person is found in the actions they take, not the privileges they inherit. The room absorbed it in silence, the lesson crystallizing in the minds of those present. Across social media, across cities, across countries, viewers would carry the message with them. The girl had been taught accountability without humiliation. The audience had been given inspiration without spectacle. And the world was reminded once again that true power lives not in entitlement, but in self-discipline, fairness, and the courage to do what is right. The courtroom drama had ended, but its resonance continued far beyond the walls where it had unfolded. The young VIP girl's arrogance, once so unshakable, had collapsed under the quiet force of principle and integrity. Dignity had endured. Justice had not bent. And for every viewer watching, the lesson was unmistakable. No matter the power one inherits, it cannot substitute for responsibility, respect, or moral courage. Moments like this remind us why character matters more than titles, more than wealth, and more than influence. When a name is wielded as a weapon, it may momentarily intimidate, but it cannot rewrite the fundamentals of fairness. Authority is earned through action, integrity, and the ability to rise above personal ego. Judge Caprio's calm, measured response demonstrated that true leadership is not loud or performative, is deliberate, fair, and unwavering. If stories like this remind you that character still matters, share this video. Let others see that entitlement has limits, that accountability is inevitable, and that integrity always leaves its mark. Subscribe for more moments where truth triumphs over privilege, where courage confronts arrogance, and where everyday heroes uphold values that inspire and guide us all. The courtroom may have been quiet now, but its message echoes across social media, living in every share, every comment, and every conversation it sparks for anyone who witnessed it. The takeaways are clear. Power is fleeting. Influence is temporary. And the only lasting authority is rooted in fairness, self-control, and moral courage in a world obsessed with power. This courtroom reminded us what real authority looks like.